The destruction of the International Space Station sent shockwaves through humanity. 7 billion people watched the live-streamed footage as the structure disintegrated into a cloud of debris, taking with it 12 astronauts from 5 nations. Global markets crashed within hours. Religious leaders called for prayer. Military commanders worldwide placed their forces on high alert. Dr. Elena Reyes hunched over her workstation in the hastily assembled xenolinguistics lab beneath the Pentagon. Dark circles rimmed her eyes after 72 hours without sleep. She replayed the Phyrexian transmission for the 100th time, focusing on the subtle harmonics underlying their primary communication frequency. "There's something here," she muttered to herself, adjusting parameters on her analysis software. "No species evolves to become this aggressive without reason." 3 terminals away, her colleague Dr. James Chen looked up from his own analysis. "The General wants results, Elena. They're talking about nuclear options upstairs. Nuclear weapons against ships that just vaporized the ISS with what looked like a targeting laser. That's suicide." She pushed away from her desk, stretching her arms above her head. "We need to understand them, not just their language. There's a psychological component we're missing." The lab door slid open as General Morris strode in, flanked by 2 aides. His weathered face betrayed no emotion, but the rigid set of his shoulders told its own story. The Chinese launched 3 experimental hypersonic missiles at the smallest Phyrexian vessel 30 minutes ago, he announced without preamble. No effect. The Russians are preparing their own response. We have maybe hours before this escalates beyond containment. Elena stood, pulling up her latest findings on the main display. "General, I need more time. There's a pattern in their communication, a fluctuation in what I believe is their emotional register whenever humans demonstrate unpredictable behavior. I think they're afraid of us." "Afraid?" The General's laugh held no humor. "Doctor, they have us outgunned at every conceivable level. Technologically, yes. But I don't think they understand us." She highlighted a section of the waveform analysis. "This spike occurred when our diplomats rejected their ultimatum without hesitation. This one when we scrambled fighters after the ISS attack instead of retreating. Their species may have evolved differently, perhaps in an environment with fewer threats, less competition. They might not comprehend our capacity for resistance." The room's emergency lights suddenly flashed red as alarms blared through the complex. "They've entered Earth's atmosphere," General Morris said, reading the alert on his tablet. "Multiple vessels, heading for major population centers." On the main screen, satellite imagery showed 5 Phyrexian destroyers descending through cloud cover, their sleek obsidian hulls reflecting sunlight as they positioned themselves over Beijing, Moscow, New Delhi, London, and Washington, D.C. "We're out of time for theories, Doctor," Morris said grimly. Elena's fingers flew across her keyboard. "Maybe not. If I'm right about their psychology, their technological advantage might be offset by biological limitations. We need to get sample data from actual Phyrexians. Tissue, atmosphere requirements, physical capabilities." "You're suggesting we capture one." "I'm suggesting we need to understand what they're capable of beyond their technology." She met his eyes steadily. "Every species has weaknesses, General, even ones that can travel between stars." As if in response to her words, the first energy weapons fired from the Phyrexian ships, carving glowing paths of destruction through human cities. The war for Earth had begun, and humanity's only advantage might be one that neither side yet understood: that humans, unlike any species the Phyrexians had encountered before, became most dangerous when pushed to the brink of extinction. Colonel Jack Harper pressed his back against the crumbling concrete wall, his uniform caked with 3 days' worth of dust and blood. 6 blocks of downtown Seattle had become his battalion's last stand, a maze of rubble and improvised traps that had somehow held off the Phyrexian ground forces longer than anyone expected. "They're regrouping again, sir," Lieutenant Rodriguez whispered, sliding down beside him. "3rd time in 4 hours. They keep rotating their frontline troops." Harper checked his ammunition. 3 magazines left. Around him, 37 soldiers remained from his original company of 200. They'd lost contact with command 2 days ago, when the aliens deployed their communication jammers. "Have you noticed how they move?" Harper asked, gesturing toward the Phyrexian position. "Watch their patrol patterns. Short bursts of activity, then they retreat to their protective enclosures." Rodriguez adjusted her cracked helmet. "Energy conservation. Maybe." Harper's eyes narrowed as he studied the nearest alien vessel through his binoculars. "Or maybe they can't handle something about our environment." A sudden explosion rocked their position as Phyrexian energy weapons blasted through a neighboring building. Harper's team scrambled to new cover, dragging their wounded. "Sir," Private Chen called out, pointing to a downed Phyrexian soldier half buried in debris. "One of them is separated from their unit." Harper made a split-second decision. "Rodriguez, Chen, Williams. With me. Everyone else, covering fire on my mark." The diversionary barrage gave Harper's small team just enough time to reach the fallen alien. Up close, the Phyrexian looked less intimidating than in military briefings. Its slender limbs and elongated torso suggested a species evolved in lower gravity. Most striking was the complex breathing apparatus attached to its face. "It's still alive," Rodriguez whispered, her rifle trained on the creature. Harper carefully detached the alien's weapon, then examined the breathing device. "Help me get this thing back to our position, and grab that atmospheric processor." Under renewed enemy fire, they dragged the unconscious Phyrexian and its equipment back behind their lines. The alien's breathing became increasingly labored as they disconnected it from its suit's environmental controls. "Look at this," Harper said, examining readings from the captured equipment. "Oxygen concentration too high for them. Atmospheric pressure uncomfortable. Gravity straining their cardiovascular system." A grim smile crossed his face. "Earth itself is a weapon against them." When they reconnected the breathing apparatus, the alien's condition stabilized. Its large, compound eyes flickered open, regarding the humans with what Harper interpreted as fear. "We need to get this intel to command," Harper said, reaching for his emergency satellite uplink, one of the few communication devices occasionally able to pierce the Phyrexian jamming. "If they all have these limitations, we can use it against them." The message took 12 attempts before confirmation of receipt flashed on the small screen. Within hours, similar reports flooded in from resistance fighters worldwide. Phyrexians retreating to their ships after short engagements, seemingly unable to maintain prolonged ground operations. In a bunker beneath the Rocky Mountains, Dr. Elena Reyes received Harper's data with growing excitement. "This confirms my theory," she told General Morris. "They're technologically superior but biologically vulnerable. They never evolved to handle environmental stresses like we did." As night fell over Seattle, Harper watched from his new command post as Phyrexian ground forces withdrew to their ships, a pattern now recognized worldwide. For the first time since the invasion began, he allowed himself to feel something like hope. "They may have better weapons," he told his weary troops, "but we have something they don't." He gestured to the rugged landscape around them. "We belong here, and they can barely breathe our air." Dr. Elena Reyes stared at the holographic display, watching the captured Phyrexian technology respond to her inputs. After weeks of reverse engineering, her team had finally created an interface that allowed them to access alien data systems. What they discovered confirmed her earliest suspicions. The Phyrexians evolved on a moon orbiting a gas giant, she explained to the assembled military leadership in the underground command center. Low gravity, stable climate, minimal environmental threats. Their civilization developed technology to solve problems that our ancestors overcame through biological adaptation. General Morris leaned forward. "Explain how this helps us now, Doctor. We've lost most of our major cities. Because understanding them reveals our comparative advantages," she said, switching the display to show physiological comparisons. "Their muscles atrophy in our gravity. Their nervous systems never evolved to process pain effectively because their environment rarely caused injury. Most critically, their decision-making processes are fundamentally different. They rely on extensive data analysis before action, while humans can make split-second judgments based on incomplete information. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. 6 months of devastating losses had left humanity desperate for any advantage. "We've been fighting them wrong," Colonel Harper said from the video feed. His face, now scared from a close encounter with Phyrexian energy weapons, filled one screen. Conventional warfare plays to their strengths: superior weapons, predictable engagements. We need to force them into situations where their physiology and psychology work against them. From another screen, Captain Maya Wong, commanding resistance forces in the Himalayan region, nodded in agreement. "My units have been engaging in hit-and-run tactics at high altitudes. The Phyrexians can barely function above 3,000 meters without extensive support systems. We've destroyed 3 of their forward bases with minimal casualties by forcing them to fight in conditions their bodies can't handle." Dr. Reyes manipulated the display once more. There's more. Their social structure is rigidly hierarchical. Each Phyrexian has a precisely defined role within their society. They literally cannot comprehend our ability to adapt and change roles as needed. A Phyrexian soldier cannot improvise like a human soldier. They follow programming, not initiative. "So we use chaos," Harper said. "Unpredictable attacks, constantly changing tactics, forcing them to fight in environments that stress their systems." "Exactly," Reyes confirmed. "And there's one more thing. Prisoners we've captured show signs of psychological breakdown after prolonged exposure to human behavior patterns. They simply cannot process our emotional responses, particularly our ability to find hope and courage in seemingly hopeless situations. It's completely foreign to their evolutionary experience." General Morris stood, his decision made. "We implement a new global strategy effective immediately. All remaining military forces will transition to guerrilla warfare tactics. We'll prioritize capturing their atmospheric processors and targeting their life support systems. Dr. Reyes, I want psychological warfare protocols developed based on your findings." As the meeting dispersed, Dr. Reyes returned to her laboratory, where 3 Phyrexian prisoners were being studied. Through the observation glass, she watched them huddle together, their movements becoming increasingly erratic as days of captivity wore on. Unlike human prisoners who might form bonds or develop coping mechanisms, the aliens seemed unable to adapt to their circumstances. They conquered 17 worlds. She murmured to herself, but they never encountered a species that evolved as persistence predators, that thrived on stress adaptation. She made additional notes in her tablet. They have no concept of what it means to face an enemy that grows stronger under pressure. Behind her, screens displayed real-time footage of resistance cells worldwide implementing the new strategy, forcing Phyrexians into prolonged engagements in harsh terrain, targeting their environmental systems, and exploiting their rigid tactical thinking. For the first time since the invasion began, humanity was finding its footing in a war that had seemed unwinnable. Captain Maya Wong led her team through the treacherous mountain pass, each soldier moving with practiced silence, despite the thin air at 4,500 meters. Below them, nestled in a valley protected by steep cliffs, sat the Phyrexian forward base, a critical supply hub for alien operations across southern Asia. "Status on their atmospheric shield," Maya whispered into her comm unit. Fluctuating on schedule, came the response from Lieutenant Patel, monitoring from a concealed position 2 kilometers away. Their systems struggle with the daily temperature variations at this altitude. Shield weakens by approximately 18% during the pre-dawn hours. Maya checked her watch. 3:47 hours. Perfect timing. Her team consisted of 26 soldiers drawn from 8 different nations, each selected for their high-altitude experience and specialized skills. What they lacked in advanced weaponry, they made up for in intimate knowledge of the unforgiving Himalayan terrain. "Remember," Maya said as they prepared for descent, "target their environmental processors first. Standard protocol: disable, don't destroy. We need those systems intact for reverse engineering." The attack began with an elegant simplicity that belied months of preparation. As the thermal readings showed the expected drop in the Phyrexian shield strength, Maya's infiltration team breached the perimeter using climbing equipment developed for Earth's most extreme environments, technology the aliens had never encountered and couldn't detect. Inside the compound, the difference between human and Phyrexian adaptability became starkly apparent. While the human soldiers moved efficiently despite the altitude, the aliens stumbled in their exoskeletal support suits, clearly struggling with Earth's gravity and atmospheric conditions. When the first atmospheric processor was disabled by Corporal Zhang's specialized EMP device, the effects were immediate and devastating. "Processor 1 down," Zhang reported. "Atmospheric regulation failing in sectors 3 through 7. Maya watched through thermal imaging as alien life signs inside those sectors began showing signs of respiratory distress. Unlike humans who could push through discomfort and adapt to changing conditions, the Phyrexians had evolved with no biological mechanisms to handle sudden environmental shifts. "They're evacuating to their ships," Lieutenant Puddle reported. "Emergency protocols activated." Now, Maya commanded, and her team launched the second phase, targeting the retreating aliens' transport vessels with precision strikes to their propulsion systems. What followed wasn't a battle so much as a systematic exploitation of biological limitations. Phyrexian soldiers, cut off from their life support systems, found themselves unable to function in Earth's atmosphere for more than minutes at a time. Their rigid tactical programming had no contingency for this scenario. Nothing in their 17 previous conquests had prepared them for enemies who could thrive in conditions that left them gasping. "Central Command, this is Captain Wang," Maya reported 2 hours later, standing in the captured alien facility. "Forward base secure. Minimal casualties on our side. We've captured 3 atmospheric processors intact, along with their associated data systems." On screens throughout the facility, Maya could see similar reports coming in from around the globe. Operation Breathless was succeeding beyond the most optimistic projections. In North America, Colonel Harper's forces had captured 2 major Phyrexian installations. In the Sahara, Commander Okafor's team had disabled an alien mining operation by targeting their cooling systems. As the sun rose over the Himalayas, Maya stood at the edge of the compound, looking down at the valley below. A Phyrexian scout ship lay disabled, its occupants having abandoned it when life support failed. Next to it, her team had raised an improvised flag, not representing any single nation, but bearing a simple outline of Earth. "They came expecting to find weakness," she said to her assembled team. "Instead, they found that this world itself fights alongside us." Tarek Nassar wiped sweat from his brow as he made final adjustments to the prototype weapon. The underground laboratory, once a particle physics research facility, now hummed with activity as scientists from dozens of nations worked side by side, united by desperation and purpose. "The power coupling is unstable," he muttered, examining the connection between salvaged Phyrexian energy cells and the human-designed targeting system. "But maybe that's exactly what we need." Dr. Rice approached his workstation, carrying a tablet filled with the latest data from field operations. "Tarek, how close are we?" "The Phyrexians are adapting their tactics. They are limiting ground exposure and relying more heavily on orbital bombardment." "Adaptation wasn't supposed to be their strong suit," he replied, not looking up from his work. "They're not adapting creatively, just falling back on established protocols for high-resistance worlds." She placed the tablet beside him. "But those protocols have worked for them before. We need a game-changer." Tarek gestured toward the device before him. "What do you think this is?" The weapon looked almost primitive compared to sleek Phyrexian technology, a patchwork of alien components integrated with human electronics, cooling systems repurposed from refrigeration units, and a power source that would make any conventional engineer recoil in horror. The Phyrexians designed their systems for optimal efficiency and predictable performance, Tarek explained. "But we've discovered their energy weapons have a resonance frequency that becomes unstable when modulated in specific patterns. patterns they would never attempt because they're inherently dangerous and unpredictable. You're creating a weapon that no Vrexian would ever design, Dr. Rice realized. Exactly. Tarek's face broke into a tired smile. They'd consider it reckless, inefficient, and borderline suicidal. But it works. The initial pulse destabilizes their shielding harmonics, while the secondary burst creates a cascading failure in any Vrexian system utilizing their standard power configuration. Across the laboratory, similar innovations were taking shape. A team of quantum physicists had reverse-engineered Vrexian communication systems and developed methods to introduce false commands. Materials scientists were creating adaptive camouflage that exploited gaps in alien sensor technology. Medical researchers had synthesized compounds that could temporarily enhance human resistance to Vrexian atmospheric weapons. None of these advancements followed the methodical, incremental path that Vrexian technology had taken over millennia. Instead, they represented the uniquely human approach to innovation, intuitive leaps, cross-disciplinary thinking, and a willingness to accept calculated risks. "We've intercepted transmissions from their high command," Dr. Rice said, lowering her voice. "They're confused by our rate of technological adaptation. Their models predicted we would be entirely subjugated by now." "Models," Tarek scoffed. "That's their fundamental error. They think they can predict us." An alert sounded throughout the facility. General Morris's voice came over the intercom. "Attention all personnel. We have confirmation that Vrexian forces are pulling back from multiple fronts. Intelligence suggests they're regrouping for a major offensive. Whatever you're working on, we need it operational within 48 hours." Tarek looked at the prototype, then at the teams of exhausted scientists around him. "We'll be ready," he said, though the claim bordered on impossible. Later that night, as most researchers grabbed precious hours of sleep, Tarek remained at his station, making an adjustment that no engineering manual would recommend. When the power coupling began to glow an ominous red, he didn't back away. Instead, he fine-tuned the instability until it balanced on the edge of catastrophic failure. "No Vrexian would dare," he whispered to himself, "and that's exactly why it will work." General Jack Harper studied the holographic display of the Vrexian command vessel. 18 months of war had aged him beyond his 45 years, but his eyes burned with the same intensity that had kept his forces fighting when surrender seemed inevitable. "The ship maintains minimal crew during standard operations," he explained to the assembled strike team. "Most functions are automated, with key officers occupying segregated command nodes. Their hierarchy is rigid. If we can eliminate or isolate the command structure, subordinate Vrexians become effectively paralyzed." The 30 soldiers before him represented humanity's best, special forces operators from a dozen nations, each specially selected and trained for this mission. Their equipment combined modified Vrexian technology with human ingenuity, atmospheric compensators that would allow them to function in the alien environment, weapons developed by Nessar's team that exploited weaknesses in Vrexian systems, and most importantly, neural disruptors designed to target the aliens' unique brain patterns. "We'll have exactly 43 minutes from breach to extraction," Harper continued. "Any longer, and they'll bring reinforcements from nearby vessels. Remember your training. Vrexians have never developed for close-quarters combat. Their physical strength is approximately 40% of human baseline in Earth normal conditions. Their reaction time is superior, but only for anticipated threats." Lieutenant Commander Diaz, leader of the infiltration team, stepped forward. "Sir, latest intelligence suggests they've modified their internal security protocols. They're learning from our tactics." "Learning, but not understanding," Harper replied. "They can observe and replicate, but they fundamentally cannot comprehend why we fight the way we do. Their updated protocols will follow logical progressions based on previous encounters, which is exactly what we're counting on." Aboard the orbital platform, a hastily converted satellite that now served as humanity's forward base in space, final preparations were underway. The modified shuttle that would deliver Harper's team to the Phyrexian vessel had been painted with radiation-absorbing material to minimize detection. Its propulsion system had been redesigned to mimic the thermal signature of orbital debris. 4 hours later, as the command ship passed over the dark side of Earth, the mission commenced. The approach was textbook, the shuttle drifting seemingly aimlessly until it reached the vessel's blind spot, then magnetic grapples securing it to the hull near a maintenance access point. Inside the alien vessel, the difference between Phyrexian and human combat readiness became immediately apparent. The aliens, never having evolved as predators, lacked the instinctive threat assessment that humans possessed. Their responses followed programmed protocols rather than adaptive thinking. They're moving exactly as predicted, Diaz reported as her team secured the first junction. Deploying standard defensive formations without adjustment for our numbers or approach vector. Harper led his team deeper into the vessel. Remember, we're not just fighting for tactical advantage. We're demonstrating that their command structure can be breached. Psychological impact is as important as the military objective. The moment they reached the central command node, Harper understood why the Phyrexians had conquered so many worlds, yet still feared humans. The alien commander, surrounded by subordinates, showed none of the adaptability that human leaders develop through evolutionary pressure. Instead of improvising a defense, it attempted to follow standard protocols that became useless when communications were jammed and command hierarchies disrupted. Secure the neural interface, Harper ordered as his team subdued the Phyrexian officers with surprising ease. Download their battle network access codes. As Specialist Chen connected their devices to the alien systems, Harper noticed something unexpected in the eyes of the Phyrexian commander, an emotion he recognized despite the vast biological differences between their species. They're afraid, he realized. Not just of defeat, but of us, of what we represent. A species that thrives on the very chaos they've spent millennia trying to eliminate from their existence. When the team extracted 17 minutes later, they carried more than battle codes and technical data. They carried proof that the seemingly invincible conquerors of 17 worlds could be beaten, not despite human nature, but because of it. The night sky above what remained of Geneva blazed with unnatural light as the Phyrexian planet killer vessels moved into position. Dr. Elena Reyes stood beside General Morris on the observation platform, watching humanity's potential extinction unfold in real time. Their weapon will catalyze a chain reaction in our atmosphere, she explained, her voice steady despite the implications. It begins with oxygen depletion in the upper atmosphere, followed by cascading chemical conversions that will render the air unbreathable within days. How ironic, Morris replied. They can't breathe our air, so they'll make it so we can't either. The command center below them buzzed with controlled chaos as Operation Thunderfall entered its final preparations. NASA's hybrid weapons have been distributed to military forces worldwide. Captain Wang's mountain forces were in position to assault the Phyrexian ground support installations. General Harper's orbital teams prepared for the most audacious aspect of the counterattack, boarding the planet killer vessels themselves. The Phyrexians believe they understand us now, Rice said, reviewing data on her tablet. Their tactical adjustments show they've cataloged our behaviors, identified patterns, and developed countermeasures. What they still don't grasp is that our apparent patterns are merely expressions of our adaptability, not limitations of it. In simpler terms, Morris asked, they think they've figured out our playbook, but don't realize we're constantly rewriting it. Below them, Nassar approached with his team of engineers, exhaustion evident in their movements, but determination burning in their eyes. Final modifications complete, he reported. The shield inversion technology is untested at this scale, but simulations show a 78% chance of success. And the psychological warfare component? Rise asked. Ready for broadcast on all Phyrexian communication frequencies. Once their shields begin to fail, they'll be unable to block the transmission. Morris checked his watch. Their weapon requires 9 minutes to fully charge. According to the battle network data Harper recovered, they'll begin the firing sequence in approximately 40 minutes. That's our window. Throughout the command center, screens displayed humanity's final defensive positions, a patchwork of military units, civilian volunteers, and hybrid technology that represented the culmination of 2 years of desperate innovation and sacrifice. "Commence Operation Thunderfall," Morris ordered. Across Earth's surface and in orbit, human forces launched simultaneous attacks on all remaining Phyrexian strongholds. Unlike previous engagements, these weren't meant to capture territory or resources. They were designed to create maximum chaos within the rigid Phyrexian command structure. As the aliens struggled to process the seemingly random attack patterns, the true purpose of the operation unfolded. NASA's shield inversion technology, deployed by Harper's orbital teams, attached to the planet killer vessel's defensive systems. Rather than trying to penetrate their formidable shields, the devices used the aliens' own energy against them, creating feedback loops that cascaded through their power networks. "It's working," Nassar whispered, watching the data streams. "Their shields are collapsing faster than they can compensate." The moment the shields faltered, Dr. Rice activated her contribution to the operation, a broadcast signal carrying specifically designed sensory and linguistic patterns gleaned from months studying captured Phyrexians. Not a weapon in the conventional sense, but a message crafted to exploit the fundamental disconnect between human and Phyrexian psychology. On the main screen, they watched Phyrexian ships begin to break formation, their carefully coordinated attack dissolving into disarray. Some vessels attempted to retreat while others fired erratically at phantom targets. "What exactly did you send them?" Morris asked, witnessing the chaos. "The one thing their rigid hierarchical minds cannot process," Rice replied. "Humanity's greatest evolutionary advantage. Our ability to find hope in hopelessness, to cooperate intensely during crisis, to become more determined when faced with extinction." The message itself was simple: images and sounds documenting humanity's response to the invasion, showing not just resistance, but the unprecedented unity that had emerged from diversity, the innovations born from desperation, the courage displayed by ordinary humans in extraordinary circumstances. "We didn't just show them that we would fight," Rice said quietly. "We showed them why we would never stop." The final battle unfolded across multiple fronts simultaneously. In orbit, where General Harper's forces boarded the crippled Phyrexian command ships. In the Himalayas, where Captain Wang's teams disrupted the aliens' last significant ground presence, and in laboratories worldwide, where Nassar and other scientists monitored the cascading failure of Phyrexian systems. Dr. Rice stood in the command center, translating the increasingly frantic alien communications. "Their high command is in disarray," she reported. "Regional commanders are requesting instructions, but the central authority structure has collapsed." "Just as we predicted," General Morris said. "Without clear hierarchy, they cannot adapt." The main display showed Harper's teams systematically securing the orbital platforms. Unlike previous engagements, the Phyrexian resistance had become disorganized and ineffective. Videos from helmet cameras showed alien troops retreating rather than fighting, their coordinated tactics replaced by individual survival instincts they had suppressed for millennia. "They're experiencing evolutionary regression," Rice explained, watching the footage. "Under extreme stress, they're reverting to behaviors their species exhibited before technology compensated for their biological limitations. They literally don't know how to function without their hierarchical structure." Reports flooded in from around the globe. Phyrexian ground forces abandoning their positions, ships breaking orbit without firing patterns, communication systems broadcasting contradictory commands. The methodical conquerors who had subjugated 17 worlds were unraveling before an enemy they had fundamentally underestimated. 12 hours into the final offensive, the transmission that no human had dared hope for arrived. The Phyrexian High Command, speaking with a unified voice for what intelligence suggested was the first time since the invasion began, requested terms of surrender. "Is this genuine?" Morris asked, skepticism evident in his expression. Reyes analyzed the message carefully. The linguistic patterns matched their formal diplomatic protocols. This appears to be their equivalent of unconditional surrender. They're acknowledging defeat according to their own cultural framework. The celebration that swept through the command center was subdued. Too much had been lost for unbridled joy. Instead, a quiet determination settled over humanity's leaders as they prepared for the aftermath of a victory that had once seemed impossible. 3 days later, Dr. Reyes, General Morris, Captain Wong, and Tarek Nasser stood on the observation deck of the captured Vrexian flagship, watching the alien armada prepare for departure. The terms of surrender had been simple but comprehensive. The immediate withdrawal of all Vrexian forces, the transfer of key technologies to prevent future aggression, and the establishment of boundaries that would keep their species from Earth's solar system permanently. They never understood what they were fighting, Nasser said, watching the alien ships. To them, we were an anomaly, a species that should have been easily conquered based on our technological development. They categorized worlds by technological advancement, Reyes agreed, but they had no metric for measuring adaptability, creativity, or determination. As the first light of dawn broke over Earth's horizon, visible through the massive viewport, Wong pointed to something below, where the rebuilt International Space Station now orbited, already incorporating salvaged Vrexian technology. Beside it, the framework for humanity's first interstellar vessel was taking shape. "We're not celebrating yet," General Morris observed. "We're already building." "That's precisely why we won," Reyes said. "The Vrexians conquered. Humans transform." The alien ships began moving away from Earth, their departure marking not just the end of the war, but the beginning of humanity's accelerated evolution. The technology inherited from the Vrexians would advance human development by centuries, but the true legacy of the conflict was more profound. Earth had emerged united, having discovered through terrible adversity that what made humans unique in the galaxy wasn't technology or physical prowess, but an unquantifiable resilience of spirit that no alien species had ever encountered before. "We're ready," Morris said simply, looking at the stars beyond. "Ready not for conquest, but for exploration. Ready to carry into the cosmos the hard-won wisdom that strength lies not in technological superiority, but in the uniquely human ability to face the unknown with courage, creativity, and an unwavering will to survive."